Being followed.
This happened several years ago. I used to walk up to 7-Eleven about 2 miles from where I lived to get a big gulp. The store was located on a 4-lane road, and there were several fast food places. I noticed a white pickup driving down the turn lane. Okay, he wants McDonald's. He turns in and parks closest to the sidewalk. I keep walking. I hear running footsteps. Turn around and the guy was running up on me. He stopped. I made eye contact, straightened into fighting position, and he got back into his pickup. He continued to drive in the turn lane. He turned into a pizza place, again parking in a spot nearest to the road. I looked at the vehicle and he didn't get out. I kept walking. This pattern continued for another 2 stores. I finally got to the 7-Eleven. I asked the clerk to call 911. The idiot went out to confront the guy, came back in and told me he said that the guy was just waiting for someone. Yeah. Me, you absolute moron. I guess the man in the pickup truck was scared off by all this. He left. I read the newspaper about a week later. Pickup man was arrested for 3 sexual assaults. To clear it up, it was late enough that the fast food places were closed, except the drive-thrus.
Footsteps in the dark.
It was around 9 or 10 at night when I thought it would be a good idea to walk up to the nearby little grocery store, which was less than a 10-minute walk from an apartment that I shared with my 2 friends at the time. I have always been a night owl and a snacker, and I had run out of my favorite snacks, which were pepperoni sticks and Pepsi back then. I got to the store, picked out my items, paid for them, and left with no issues. I was about halfway up the street when I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, as if someone were watching me. Glancing around nervously, I only saw parked cars. I continued to walk, but perked my ears. That's when I heard it. Footfalls. I paused under the guise of tying my shoe to listen closer, and the sound stopped. Thinking that I was perhaps only hearing the echo of my own shoes as I walked, I smiled internally and began my way along again. Then I realized my own footfalls made no echo, probably due to the soft-soled Keds I was sporting at the time, and that, after a moment, the sound of footsteps I had heard before started up again. This time, though, they sounded a little closer than they were only moments before. I nearly jumped out of my skin when I felt someone coming up behind me and turned to see a young blonde man who looked a few years older than I was at the time. He apologized for startling me, and, looking across the street for a second, he asked if he could walk with me. I didn't get any creepy vibes off of him, and the strange footsteps were still sounding behind us as we walked, and making my skin prickle. So I agreed. We were nearly to my street when he said, "I didn't want to say anything and freak you out or anything, but the reason I asked to walk with you was I saw a man following you for the last 2 or 3 blocks, carrying a crowbar." Not his exact words, but an approximation of what I can remember. Author's note. That young man was named Paul, and he had been a student attending a nearby college, and he ended up becoming friends with myself and my friends in the area at the time. The crowbar creeper, I guess, decided it was too much trouble, now that his would-be prey was no longer walking alone, because I've never heard from him again. But strange footsteps on a street in the quiet of the night always gave me the willies after that.
I'm just warning you. He's coming.
I'm on mobile, so I apologize for the formatting. This is a story from when I was 16 years old. I was a sophomore in high school, and I had recently thrown my rebellious stage into full throttle, trying every drug available to me. The one drug I've never tried is meth. But as life would ironically have it, I started dating this meth addict named Richard. This story isn't so much about him as it is about his dealer, TJ. My boyfriend was a tiny, short guy who fortunately never laid a hand on me. His dealer, on the other hand, was a massive guy. He stood 6'3" and must have weighed 300 pounds. He had a machete he kept in his boot at all times, and I once saw him knock a guy out for simply glancing at his house. He is a schizophrenic meth addict and dealer. Also, he lived directly across the street from me. About 6 months into my relationship with Richard, I ended it and told my parents everything. They were concerned, of course, but I was still in a lot of trouble. A few weeks after we'd broken up, I get a Skype video call request from him. I stupidly accepted it, and he cut right to the chase, telling me that TJ's cousin had recently been arrested and somehow their meth-addled brains believed that I was the cause of this, despite never having met his cousin. I told Richard to try to talk some sense into TJ, but all Richard said was, "I'm just trying to warn you. He's coming," and ended the Skype call. Because I was a stupid teenager, I didn't report this to the police and didn't tell my parents until much later in life. I think my reasoning at the time was that I was using a lot of drugs myself, and I was afraid that I would get into trouble as well. After the night of the Skype call, I saw TJ everywhere. He was watching my house. He would show up at the park near my school where I'd smoke, and I'd see him standing across the street from my bus stop. He never said anything or made any moves. He just stared at me. This continued on for months, ramping up my anxiety and making it impossible for me to sleep. I started falling asleep in class and finding riskier places to smoke near campus to stay away from him. It was total agony, knowing that something horrible was coming, but I was still too dumb to do anything about it. Luckily, TJ got busted after 3 months of watching me because some lady suspected he was making meth in his house. He's still in jail from what I know, and I never saw Richard again after that Skype call. I hope I never have to see him again, and I would be smart enough now to contact the police if I do.